welcome back. Today I'll be recreating some more or less iconic food moments from the Harry Potter universe for the second time actually. My first Harry Potter video is over 2 years old at this point, so I thought it was time to revisit this series. Quick disclaimer, as always, everything's gonna be vegan. Also, thanks to Squarespace for today's support, and with that said, let us begin.
Got something for you. Afraid I might have sat on it at some point, but I imagine it'll taste fine just the same. Baked it myself, words and all.
Thank you.
It just makes sense to start with the cake Hagrid gives to Harry on his 11th birthday early on in the story. In the book, the cake is described as a large, sticky chocolate cake with Happy Birthday Harry written on it in green icing. I love that in the movie they decided to add the little typos. It makes a lot of sense for Hagrid's character because in the same chapter he mentions that he can't spell the name Voldemort. Preheat your oven to 180 degrees Celsius. Thoroughly grease a round 8-inch or 20-centimeter springform pan and grab a large mixing bowl. Add flour, unsweetened cacao powder, salt, baking powder, and raw sugar. Give that a quick mix. Next up, pour in some non-dairy milk, vegetable oil, and applesauce. Also add some apple cider vinegar and some vanilla. Combine everything with a hand mixer or simply just by hand until smooth. Lastly, fold in your chocolate chips and pour the batter into your cake pan. Bake this guy for around 50 minutes, then leave it to cool on the counter completely. As it's cooling down, go ahead and make your buttercream frosting. Once again, you'll need a big mixing bowl to which you're gonna add some vegan butter at room temperature. I had put mine into the still hot oven for a couple minutes to get it to that soft consistency. Add an insane amount of powdered sugar, salt, and vanilla. I mix it up with a spatula first until roughly combined and then switch to the hand mixer. Mix the butter and sugar for a couple minutes until it turns into this thick and smooth cream. Add a tiny bit of non-dairy milk as well.
I know it isn't easy, but you need me like I need.
Set aside 2 heaping tablespoons for the green icing. So for the majority of the cake, you'll need a pink, red, or magenta tone, as well as some more unsweetened cacao powder, because if you look at the reference photo, it's not really bright pink. So slowly mix in more and more of the brown and the pink until you're happy with the end result. So how much food dye you'll need depends on how intense your colors are. Since mine are vegan natural food colors, they're not very intense. Like for the green part, I ended up having to add the entire packet to achieve a dark foresty green. Also, consistency-wise, keep in mind the green needs to be slightly less stiff than the pink part, so add a tiny bit more non-dairy milk here. At this point, I was too tired to continue. I put everything in my fridge and picked this back up the following morning. I placed these 2 bowls next to my heater for like 20 minutes to soften up again. Also, I cut off a little bit of the excess top of the cake so I'd have an even surface to decorate. Spread the entire cake with the pink icing using one of these handy tools. You could also just use a spatula, but this thing has a more sharp edge to it and it'll make the frosting look a lot more clean in the end. Unlike myself, I don't have one of those spinning cake stands. That would have been very helpful here. Apart from the mess I was making, this step was actually pretty easy, even though decorating cakes is definitely not my specialty. I once again pulled out the reference photo here, grabbed a knife with a sharp pointy tip, and drew on the letters so I would know where the green would go. Transfer the green icing to either a piping bag or a piping bottle like this one, and you mount it with a small round piping tip. Getting the cream inside this bottle was a journey. If you want to get a feel for the writing first, do a little testing round on a sheet of parchment paper And then once you feel confident and you've got an idea of how much pressure you need to use, then go ahead and fill in the letters. The great thing about this cake is you don't have to be perfect here at all because Hagrid, he's not a pastry chef, so if you mess up, that's okay. Make sure to skip the little random swirl. Maybe perhaps this is supposed to be Harry's scar? I don't know, what do you think? While letting the frosting sit for like 15 minutes, I took hundreds of photos. I don't normally decorate anything when I bake, so this was very different, but very fun for me. Oh, and very, very yum as well. Pumpkin juice is being referenced throughout the series many times.
You look dreadful, Ron. Is that why you put something in his cup? Is it a tonic?
As you might remember, I did a recipe for pumpkin juice last time as well, but I made it into like a warm punch version, which now I know is, although delicious, false actually, because they drink it iced. And I was just so curious about how that would taste like. First off, I made my own pumpkin puree. I'd usually blend the roasted pumpkin in a food processor, which is now not necessary since we're gonna blend everything anyway in a big blender. Apart from about a half a cup of the roasted pumpkin, you're gonna add some lemon juice, cinnamon and or pumpkin pie spice, or Stollen spice, a few soft dates, apple juice, and water. Taste test and see if you need to adjust anything, if you need to make it sweeter for instance, and then serve it on some ice. I love this stuff. It definitely has a unique but cozy flavor. So apparently people ship Malfoy with an apple. It's called Drapple. I thought this was so funny I had to include something green apple flavored in this video, such as green apple cauldron cakes. Like pumpkin juice, cauldron cakes are a very popular food item among wizards. As far as I know, in the books and in the movies, it's never really described what they are exactly, but if you look at the Harry Potter wiki entry for cauldron cakes, there's this little picture clip art thing. Anyway, this was my reference photo for the following recipe: Malfoy's green apple cauldron cakes. Grease a muffin tin and preheat your oven to 180 degrees Celsius. Melt down some vegan butter as you're measuring out and combining all the dry ingredients in a large mixing bowl. Flour, baking powder, salt, unsweetened cacao powder, sugar, and some sort of wintry spice mix, or just plain old cinnamon. Then add some soy yogurt, vanilla, the melted vegan butter, and apple juice. Mix it all up until smooth, and then using an ice cream scoop or just a regular spoon, fill up 11 of your muffin molds 3/4 of the way. Let these cool completely while you prep the green topping, and there's many different options that you have here. You could either again use a small batch of buttercream, or you could make the cashew frosting, or you could go the lazy route and go for some thick vegan yogurt, vegan whipped cream, or some oat-based sour cream, which is what I did. Add some green food coloring. I had to blend up some yellow and blue for that, because remember I used up all the green for the letters. I was struggling quite a bit to find candy-like green apple aroma. I didn't just want regular apple flavor, I wanted the green apple flavor, if that makes any sense. I couldn't find it anywhere at stores. I was looking online, but just kept ending up at these vape flavor websites. But then I had the idea to try and find products that have a high concentrated amount of apple aroma already in them. And so I went for this sugary apple tea drink, and I made an insanely strong apple syrup out of this by just combining tablespoons upon tablespoons of that stuff with a small amount of water. And this tasted disgusting on its own, but if you just add it to your frosting bit by bit, you can regulate how much it's gonna taste like green apple. You could also finish your cauldron cakes off with some baking glitter, if you happen to have that, or some candy eyes. And yeah, these turned out so well. I'm just so excited about the fact that they actually taste like green apple. Okay, so for this next idea, we're going to be making the plant-based version of what I think a typical Hogwarts breakfast looks like. Here we can see Ron eating what I assume is sausages, bacon, and eggs. Sausages, bacon, and eggs, and toast are mentioned in the books as breakfast foods numerous times. If you're planning on making all these foods at once, you'd have to think a bit about which order you make them in so they all are ready at the same time. So yeah, I made the mix for the tofu scramble first. Crumble up a block of firm tofu in a large mixing bowl. Add cornstarch, turmeric and other spices, nutritional yeast, and salt. Mix that up, and then add some unsweetened soy yogurt, as well as some white wine vinegar. Last but not least, I also added some frozen red onion. I let this sit and rest while I prepared the other two components. But all there's left to do is simply bring a small skillet with some vegan butter to medium-high heat. Then you're gonna add the tofu and let it cook for around 8 minutes. Feel free to add some parsley or chives in the end as well. For the sausages, I pretty much followed the sausage recipe from my Christmas market video, but I skipped the garlic and onion and basically just put all the other required ingredients inside a food processor, and then I shaped them into sausages on a baking sheet lined with parchment paper. I also made another slight change. I brushed them with barbecue sauce and baked them for 8 to 10 minutes in a preheated oven at 200 degrees Celsius. Then, to give them some more color, I quickly fried them in a pan with a bit of oil for 2 to 3 minutes on medium-high heat. Some of them I wrapped in rice paper as well, but because we have the barbecue sauce layer this time, I found that actually wasn't necessary, adding the rice paper. Speaking of rice paper though, lastly for the bacon, we're gonna be making rice paper bacon. So for that, I made a quick marinade out of smoky barbecue sauce, white wine vinegar, mustard, and a bit of oil. And then I grabbed a couple sheets of rice paper, let them soak one after the other in a deep dish plate filled with water for about 20 seconds. I then cut them into long strips, about 4 centimeters wide, placed them on a baking sheet with parchment paper, and brushed them generously with the marinade. I let the rice paper bake in the preheated oven at 200 degrees Celsius for 8 to 10 minutes. So you could technically bake the sausages and the bacon at the same time on 2 separate trays. So while everything was baking in the oven, I quickly scrambled. I fried the scrambled tofu and then that was it. Very tasty, very yummy. 10 points. For this last and final recipe, we're looking at this scene where Ginny awkwardly feeds Harry with mince pies. To all my British friends, are mince pies, is that a Christmas only kind of treat? If yes, then I'm sorry for posting this now. But yeah, they are like buttery little pastries with a spiced, fruity filling. In a large mixing bowl, you're gonna combine flour, salt, and powdered sugar. Then add some cold vegan butter that was cut into cubes. Mix in the butter with your hands, distributing it throughout so you have little specks of cold butter everywhere. Then add some orange zest and a couple tablespoons of non-dairy milk. Form this into a little yellow ball. Wrap it up in some parchment paper and place it into the fridge for about an hour. In the meantime, you can go ahead and make the filling, which will have to cool down completely before we're adding it to the pastry later. To a small saucepan, add 1 chopped green apple, some chopped dried apricots, raisins, and some cranberries, also some lemon juice, some candied orange, a tablespoon of cold vegan butter, and again, some wintry spices. This is optional, but you could also add some amaretto or rum to this, or just substitute the alcohol for some additional apple juice. Mix it all up and bring it to a simmer, and then let it cook on medium for a good 15 minutes while stirring frequently. In the meantime, go ahead and grease your muffin tray. This recipe makes enough for 10 to 12 little tiny pies. Also preheat your oven at this point to 180 degrees Celsius. Lightly flour your surface and roll out the ball of pastry dough with a rolling pin till it is about 4 millimeters in thickness. And then you can go ahead and grab either a round cookie cutter or a big glass jar and cut out 10 to 12 circles. Keep re-rolling the dough until you have enough, and then place the circles inside the muffin molds, dragging them up along the sides a bit, if that makes sense. And then fill up each one with the filling, dividing it evenly. The last bit of pastry we're gonna roll out again and ideally cut out little stars using a small cookie cutter. I tried my best to do that with a knife, but then gave up quickly. Let your pies bake until golden brown, and then serve them with powdered sugar, covering up all those sad-looking stars. If you guys enjoyed this, make sure to check out my other fandom food videos. Like I said, I did Harry Potter before, I did Twilight, I've done Gilmore Girls, what else? SpongeBob, Stranger Things. Actually, I have a playlist on my channel that I will leave the link for in the description. Also, thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this insanely nerdy video. The new year is coming up. That means it is the best time to tackle things and projects that have been on your mind since forever. Maybe you've just started a podcast or a food blog and are in desperate need of a nice, cool looking website. Why not make it with Squarespace, because they have absolutely stunning, professional looking website templates. You can also use their tools for analytics to grow your brand, create your logo using their logo maker, and purchase your own unique domain name. Their SEO tools help your website be found through popular search engines a lot quicker. And if you need any help, their 24/7 customer service is always there for you. Use my code MinaRome for 10% off your first purchase, or visit squarespace.com/MinaRome. Thank you so much for watching this until the end. I will talk to you very soon. Bye!
White teeth and black leather. You and I would go good together, babe. Black soul, white feathers. You and I would go good together.